It's What's Good Under the Hood. And I practiced this a minute ago. Here we go. That's Greg, owner of Mazda of Columbia. What's good under the hood? And on the other side, I'm not going to attempt to point again. From Fox Sports Radio, 1400 AM, Rob Sanders, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of What's Good Under the Hood. Now, if you're listening to this, it can also be watched as well on YouTube. Do you guys know? Of course you do, because you set it up.
It's the Mazda. Search for Mazda of Columbia on YouTube, and you will find the podcast set up there in video form, so you can see the beauty of three great faces that should be etched up at Mount Rushmore in the visitors parking lot. That way, you can come in and see that, cleanse the palate before you go see the real faces of Mount Rushmore.
Fortunately, your screen is a little dark there, Rob.
He's hiding under his hat bill.
What a blessing to all right there. Anyway,
let's talk about, we were talking before we got started about the pros and cons of buying an import versus buying an American vehicle. And I'm sure that Greg Hood has plenty to talk about on that. What you say, bud?
I have plenty to talk about on that. You're asking me, well, one of the things you said was that, or Rob actually said it, talked about people would criticize him when he was in Indiana because he was driving a foreign car, and there's a lot more American
they looked
cars.
At me like I was silly. They were like, "What? Why are you driving that car? It wasn't made here. What is wrong with you?" That's what some of them would say to me, and I'm like, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm up there. It's a bunch of cornfields. I might not make it out of there. I don't know.
What's funny is so many of these cars now are made here that are from there. So, the money may ultimately end up in Japan or wherever the company's from. But, if you look at around South Carolina or Huntsville, Alabama, as a matter of fact, is where Mazda and Toyota just built a $2.3 billion plant. That money went into the economy. BMW up here in Greer, South Carolina, they bought 900 acres of property and built that factory. And one of the statistics I read a while back was that for every 10 jobs that were generated through the plant, 90 jobs were generated in support of what goes on there. So, if you look at Greer as a community, or Spartanburg, Greenville, whatever, a lot of that with Michelin being there and with BMW being there and the support that goes around those suppliers and everything else up there, that has changed the texture of that part of the state with wealth, and there's a good worker base up there as well. So there's some advantages to that, and a lot of cars are made there. I mean, a lot of the sport utilities are made up in there. In Alabama, this new project with Mazda and Toyota, they're not sharing a lot of their technology in terms of what kind of car that they're building. They're very separate. We're using a little bit of hybrid technology for Mazda out of one of the hybrids that's coming out. But that's it. What they really did was the benefit for Toyota and Mazda together, but more Toyota to pair with Mazda, is that their engineering technology for manufacturing is so good. Their quality control and their ability to manufacture a car is beyond most of the manufacturers in the world. So it was a good pairing for them. But, so now when people say, well, I buy American, yeah, okay, but probably the car you're driving, even if you buy a foreign one, there's a Honda plant that's here. There's Toyota plants that are here. There's BMW, obviously, it's here. There's plants in Canada. There's plants in Mexico. But generally, there's a lot of shared stuff. So it's no longer so much that way. I think what you're probably more referring to is when you're up in the Michigan area or Indiana or all those places, those are really kind of union areas, and I'm not knocking unions. I'm just saying they're predominantly that. So there's a loyalty. You wouldn't dare drive a Honda and park it in the parking lot at the GM plant or Chrysler plant. It really wouldn't. You might come out with flat tires or something. Who knows?
I was about to say, not unless you wanted to get kneecapped.
They block you in and you can't get home. I don't know what the deal would be, but they got no sense of humor and that kind of stuff. So there's a loyalty, and that comes from years and years and years of that thought process. And, when you drive through Detroit, I was up there for a while and looking around, driving around, and, man, there's a lot of American cars, and there's a lot of American cars I wouldn't want to drive. I mean, you got,
for example,
Dodge Journey. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot I would. I mean, Ram pickup, I think they're fantastic. Chevy pickups, Fords. I mean, I like a Corvette. I like a Hellcat. I mean, there's a lot of good American cars. And there's a lot of good foreign cars too. And the funny thing is, there's a perception in the world, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, that the only ones that make a good car are foreign cars, and that's not true. I would tell you this honestly. It sounds biased, but a Mazda is probably better than most. And it from an ownership standpoint of a car dealership, I will tell you that they call our fixed operations when you have parts and service. If they're not being repaired all the time, you don't make as much money there. So, are there lines that you can a dealership can profit more due to the fact that the car is a little bit less reliable? Yeah. Are they American cars generally? Generally, yeah. They have had different standards of quality, but they're really catching up. It's all starting to even out. So it's really more than what you
build cars. Do they put certain parts in the car? And I've got a reason for saying this. They put certain parts in a car, certain light bulbs, certain pieces that they know are going to wear out early. I drove a Tahoe for quite a number of years, and one of the running lights underneath one of the front headlights on the left, it went out. And I started noticing every Tahoe that I approached on the road, the same bulb was burnt out.
That's a great observation, but it really wasn't what you thought it was. It was probably more a supplier problem. And so whoever, it's like, I'll give you an example. So do you have LEDs, lights in your house?
Yeah.
And they swear up and down on the package that thing's going to last 20 years, right?
And I bought into it, yeah.
Yeah, well, how the hell do they know? Because they haven't been around 20 years. They can't put 20 years of light running on a light in 20 years that wasn't 20 years. I mean, it's just not possible. So they're blowing a little bit of smoke in that deal. And I can tell you this, I've seen more than one LED light fail. And it didn't make it 20 years. I had some in a showroom down in Florida that didn't make it 2 months. One of them blew up on the showroom floor. So, my point is that there are suppliers that they, GM or Mazda or Honda or whoever, they don't make a light bulb. They call upon somebody, they give them a spec for what they need to make that happen. And then they fulfill that and they get them all. So if the particular lamp had to be or inherently had a short lifespan, you'd see all those Tahoes winking at you when you went down the road.
Every single time, and it's the same side. It's the same thing over.
And that could have been part of the wiring harness. I don't know. I can't remember. I remember that happening on them, but I can't remember what the source of it was. Whether it was the lighting or whether itself, or whether it was the harness that was on it had some kind of failure to it. But generally, when that happens, it's not so much design, it might be more supplier. I think that there are manufacturers that might go through a little more stringent testing of a product before they put it in a car. I think there are manufacturers, and I'm not going to name them because that just isn't fair to the people that sell them, but that have used the dealership as more of their R&D when they make a car than they do, actually in the R&D plant. They say, oh, well, put it out, and there's a built-in cost of, what it's going to cost to repair it when it's in a shop versus if they did the R&D to design it now. And all that stuff gets weighed out. If it's safety, they don't cut corners. But if it's other things, they may say, well, it may fail, it may not fail. But if it does, we can repair them in the dealership, and it's only going to cost X amount of bucks. So they weigh that into what they're trying to do.
Makes sense.
So, it does make sense. It's a calculated risk in everything they do. Did you ever hear the story about why McDonald's got sued for all that much money for the lady that burned herself with coffee?
No, I'd like to hear this stuff.
Well, it's pretty interesting. So I went to an attorney once over an issue I had, and we were talking about the ability to sue and come up with some kind of a reward. And it wasn't much past that time. And he started explaining to me why McDonald's got such a huge award for some woman spilling a cup of coffee on her private parts. And she truly was injured. I mean, there was no doubt about it. And the reason why was because the coffee was so hot. And the reason that McDonald's got hung out to dry so bad and for so much money is because it was discovered that there was a calculated risk in them and how they did their coffee. So now when you go to McDonald's, they got really good coffee. 20 years ago, their coffee was absolutely atrocious. And the reason it was so bad was because they calculated if they didn't make fresh coffee every day and they kept reusing it, how much money would they save over a term of a year? And in doing that, what happened was that in order to make that coffee pass muster that people would actually drink it, they raised the temperature. So they would scald their tongue when they drank it, and then they wouldn't really be able to taste it. You're laughing at it. It's true.
So they killed their taste buds.
They killed their taste buds.
How much did she get?
Oh, I mean, it was, I don't know, 50 million or something. I could be even wrong on that. That'd be worth researching, but it was a significant amount of money. But they found out, though, that there were, I don't know, there were emails, but there was conversations and stuff where they actually did a calculation, and it was millions and millions of dollars they would save by not tossing out coffee. And so they weighed in the fact that something would go wrong and they could get sued. Well, when that came out, they got annihilated. And many people went, oh my gosh, why in the world would they pay out that kind of money? Well, when everything's peeled back and you figure it out, she deserved it because they flat did her dirty. So now they've got all the things on the coffee cup, caution, hot, blah, 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 and trying to protect themselves. But they don't, obviously they've changed their business model, and rightfly so.
I'll take a cup of coffee in my crotch for $50 million.
Well, actually, I found the story.
I'll do it for you for free. I'll just throw it on you.
So let me don my news director voice for a moment here. In 1992, 79-year-old Stella Liebeck bought a cup of takeout coffee at McDonald's in Albuquerque and spilled it on her lap. She sued McDonald's, and a grand jury awarded her nearly $3 million in punitive damages for the burns she suffered. And it's exactly what Greg said there. She said that they basically, it burned they had their coffee at a point where it would burn your tongue, and they weren't really recycling. They were recycling their coffee basically, which is kind of gross. But she got $3 million at the age of 79 years old. If you give me $3 million at the age of 79, you know what I'm going to do? I'll probably buy myself a teenager to come and clean my house.
She had
buy a teenager.
You certainly can.
I didn't think about that. That didn't sound good, but she's cleaning your house, so that's okay.
I'll clean the house. I mean, that way they're young and vibrant and can knock some stuff out.
Right.
But you don't buy them, you pay them.
But she had a bunch of surgeries on her unit there, and that was kind of an issue. So she didn't have that wasn't a pleasant experience for her. So if I can throw a little coffee on you, give you $3 million, burn up your program.
Well, but at 79, do you really need your program anyway? I'd much rather have a teenager to clean my house. You know what?
Jack LaLanne said, use it or lose it. And I got to tell you something, I don't want to lose it.
Jack LaLanne, you just showed your age, dude.
I'm already old. I know it. I'll admit it. I'm 27.
My grandmother used to watch Jack LaLanne on television.
Yeah, he pulls out a chair and does deep knee bend. That guy was ripped, man, and he was ripped up till the day he died, which was last year or something. I don't know, but he was not that reason. No, I know but he was in great shape, and but that was his comment: use it or lose it.
Speaking of being in great shape, are you guys watching the Olympics?
No.
I mentioned before we came on that the other night I was actually standing in my living room watching the United States beat Iran in basketball. We beat them by like 55 points. That made me happy, just so happy.
That was a shame. That was a shame win after France beat the bejesus out of them.
Well, but you have to. Normally the French surrender if you wave a flag at them, but not this year. Oh. How do you lose to a guy named Rudy Gobert and then another guy named Saborini? Those were the two guys that just smacked around Kevin Durant and a couple other guys, and they waved the French flag at us as we left the court in shame.
Wasn't it if I remember correctly, when the Dream Team won? If I'm not mistaken, that was a Slavic country of some kind where they wanted pictures with all the guys because they got beat like a drum.
But the difference between the Dream Team in 1992, they had Charles Barkley on it, and some guy from Angola in the first matchup decided, all right, I'm going to bump Charles Barkley. And Barkley, basically, they were up 50 points, and Barkley just flat out elbowed him and told him point blank, don't touch me again. We don't have a dog like that over there with this Olympic team.
No, but, I don't even, other than Durant, I didn't recognize any of the names that were on the list of who the players were. I don't follow NBA anymore, but.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
No, I'm not. I don't feel like getting political in my sports, so I just stay out of it.
No, that's the best way to go. Well,
exactly.
We should beat France in hoops. I think that as an American,
we should beat France at everything.
Exactly.
So
I felt terrible on that game the other day. It did feel good to beat
before
Iran.
we go, you have to recount exactly what happened at your house when we beat Iran.
So the game is at 12. The tip off for the game was at 12:40 at night because of the time difference in Tokyo.
Yes.
So of course, Iran is one of the worst teams in pool play. So they put them against the U.S. as like what is the equivalent of, I guess, the 10 o'clock in the morning game there, and they play games throughout the day. So the U.S. goes out and they just lay the wood to them. And I jump up off the couch and I stood there with my hand over my heart as time expired because whenever we beat Iran in anything, it just makes me happy. Not trying to be political. I'm just saying, stood there.
All you have to say, Rob, is we nuked them.
Well, we were 18 of 36 from 3-point land, so that's pretty much a nuking from behind the arc.
Yeah, you're right about
that. Against the Frenchies later on, so
we were dropping some bombs
in my shorts and a t-shirt, and was happy to be an American as we beat up on Iran.
What awesome. Did you say at that moment?
We won't say that here because I'm trying to keep this a friendly podcast, but it was basically beep 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 Iran. Beep beep Iran, and the wife's yelling at me. Why are you yelling at 2 o'clock in the morning at the television?
Why do you have Lee Greenwood turned up so loud singing "I'm proud to be an American"? What is going on?
My house is a zoo, so yeah, that's what you have to deal with.
That's awesome.
What do you have? 3 cats and 3 kids?
3 cats, 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a wife who somehow stays there. I don't understand why she does.
Oh my gosh.
A mess.
Crazy.
I salute Karen.
Exactly.
It is What's Good Under the Hood. Greg Hood, Rob Sanders, and me, Andy Woods. Thanks for listening and or watching. Once again, if you're only listening, you can check it out on the Mazda of Columbia YouTube channel.